Hello, welcome back. If you're new here, welcome. We did just get an influx of new subscribers here, and I don't know why, but if you're one of them, thank you for subscribing. And for you and everybody else who may be new here, this is part 3 of a series where I'm going through an export of my Goodreads want to read shelf, and I'm trying to whittle it down from almost 1,000 books to something more manageable. Like I said, this is part 3, but you don't have to watch these in any specific order. So if this is the first time you're checking out one of these videos, don't worry about it. If you watch it and you like it, there's 2 more for you at this point that you can go and check out later. And that's about it. If when you're watching this video, if you see me remove something from the list and you think that it should stay, I would love for you to let me know in the comments. There's already been several times when people have told me to either remove a book that I kept or to add a book back on that I've removed, and that's been great. That's been very helpful. There's a lot of books here, a lot to go through, and some of them I just kind of remove, and it's kind of a gut thing. Like the book just doesn't sound like it's grabbing me, and somebody will come in the comments and be like, no, put that back on. That's one of my favorite books of all time. So yeah, if you have one of those moments when you're watching this, please let me know. I would love to hear your thoughts. At the end of last month's video, we made it to book 202, and at the end of today, we'll be hopefully at around 300. So we'll see how we do. Hopefully we make a lot of cuts today. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling brutal. I'm feeling ruthless. So we'll see what happens. Without further ado, let's get into it. All right, before we get going, I just want to mention that I am using a different software today to record this. I'm using OBS, so if it looks different, that's why. I also want to call out that I removed 2 columns from the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet, as a reminder, is just an export from Goodreads. So I got rid of the date added to my TBR and the page count of each individual book. I just wasn't referencing them on the spreadsheet, and the information is available on Goodreads if I do need it. We left off the last video talking about Sea of Tranquility, and we had decided that it was gonna stay on the list, which is a decision that I'm sticking with. I'm not removing Emily St. John Mandel because I think that I really will enjoy her books, so they all stay. So we can move on to The Book Eaters. The Book Eaters, I think the premise of this book is that if you eat the book, if you eat a book, you get all the knowledge, all the content of the book kind of goes into you through eating the book. I did not realize that this was under the horror category, which is interesting. The ratings are decent. It's horror. I feel like, I don't know if this is true, but I feel like horror, it's definitely true in movies, and I think it's true of books too, that the ratings seem to skew a little lower. Where maybe around a 4 is good for, just regular fantasy, and then around 3, 5 is good for horror. I don't know if that makes sense, but I know when I watch horror movies and I look up their reviews before I watch them, I'm not looking for anything close to 100. I'm looking for a 70. 70 is a good horror movie. So anyway, the 3.63 does not deter me at all from this. I do see that my friend Mair gave this 2 stars. So I do typically agree with, or see that I'm aligned with Mair's reads. This is Mair of Lady Mair Reads, by the way. If you haven't checked out her content, she's great. You should totally go do that. Yeah, she gave it 2 stars, which does deter me. I think, I'm going to remove this kind of entirely based on Mair not liking it. She didn't add a review, just a 2-star rating. So yeah, I'd be curious to hear her thoughts if she sees this. Moving on, we have Fairy Tale by Stephen King. Stephen King, I think last time we removed, or not last time, maybe the first video, I think we removed Dr. Sleep from the TBR because I don't think that that's a good place to start. I also don't think Fairy Tale will be a good place to start. This is one of the newer ones, but I've heard it's good, albeit I think I've heard that it's also long, but I've heard good things. Regardless, I don't think this is where I want to start with Stephen King. So I will be removing this. That's all I have to say about that. I have not read any Stephen King, but would love to hear thoughts on where to begin with Stephen King. I have some thoughts of my own, but I'm curious to see what others think. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. The cover of this always bugged me. I don't like it. I don't know why. It's just weird. I don't like that. I don't like the way that looks. But I have no idea what this book is actually about. I think my brother just read it, so I might ask him what his thoughts are on it. I feel like he liked it. This person was wronged by this book. They did not like it. I honestly don't remember the last time I was so bored and annoyed by a book. Oh, okay, well, not super fun. But there's a lot of really good reviews, so I'm not letting that sway me. I know it's a classic. I know it's one of those ones that people talk about all the time. Or maybe not all the time, but people like it. People like this book. I just, for whatever reason, I don't think it's speaking to me right now. The best chronicle of drug-soaked, addle-brained, rollicking good times ever committed on the printed page. I don't know. I don't know that I care about that. So I'm going to remove this. By the way, I'm feeling pretty brutal today. I feel like I'm going to be ruthless today. I want to kick things off this list. Invisible Life of Addie LaRue is not, however, something that I think I will be kicking off this list. This is on my shelf upstairs. I've heard very good things. It just sounds great. I haven't read a ton of romance books, as I've mentioned several times in these videos, but I think I'm pretty into magical realism. The premise of this sounds great. It's such an interesting space, and I feel like you could do a lot with it, and I'm kind of very curious to see what Victoria E. Schwab did with it. It's, the premise is pretty much, it's here on the screen, but basically the main character, I assume Addie LaRue, she makes some sort of deal with some sort of magical being, and the deal is that she will live forever, but everybody that she meets will forget her, I think, immediately. Like, nobody will remember who she is. So I don't know. I'm curious to see, how is this a romance if you're not able to make any sort of impact on the people around you? I'm very curious about that. I do think this sounds really good. So this will absolutely be staying on the list. I don't know when I'll get to it, but it sounds great. 1,000 Ships. This is Greek mythology. I have not read Natalie Haynes before. I'm not sure even, honestly, other books by them. But in the Greek mythology space, I've really only read Stephen Fry, Madeline Miller, and like a little bit of Homer, right? So I would love to try more. Jennifer Saint, Costanza Cassetti, I think, the author of Clytemnestra, and Natalie Haynes. Those are all kind of the top of mind authors when it comes to Greek mythology retelling. So yeah, this can stay as well. Okay, we have 2 James Hoffman books in a row here. How to Make the Best Coffee at Home and The World Atlas of Coffee, From Beans to Brewing. James Hoffman, for those of you who don't know, he's a YouTuber. Well, he's not just a YouTuber, but that's what he's doing right now. He's doing a lot of YouTube content. He makes really cool content around coffee, the origins and the brewing, different kinds of brewing methods and different machines and different, devices you can use for coffee consumption or brewing or anything. He's a really interesting guy, very smart, very knowledgeable about this subject. He's clearly done coffee his whole life. Everything that he does revolves around coffee. He does really cool work. If you're into coffee, you want to learn a little bit more about it, he's an excellent resource for that. And he's written 2 books about it. I actually own this one, How to Make the Best Coffee at Home. And I do want The World Atlas of Coffee, but I have not read this book, and I will not be reading this book. And that's just because they're not really books that are meant for reading, if that makes sense. This one, How to Make the Best Coffee at Home, again, I have it upstairs, and I will reference it when I'm making coffee sometimes. I'll flip through it, and, okay, this is how James Hoffman would make a French press, and then I'll read, the couple pages on that. I'll follow his guide and whatever. That's very fun. But it's not a book that you're going to sit down, look at page 1 and read it all the way through to the end. I'm sure people have, but I'm not going to do that. It's just not that kind of book. And similarly, The World Atlas of Coffee, it's, again, it is a book, but it's more of a coffee table book. At least that's what it seems like to me. It's very interesting, I'm sure, all the content in it, and I'm sure it's very well explained because James Hoffman is great. But again, it's not the kind of book that you read. You put this on your coffee table and it's a statement piece, and people can come over and look at it, and it's really cool. You can flip through it, really cool. But yeah, I'm going to remove them from the TBR because they're not things that I will be reading, but I would like to own them. So they're gone. But again, James Hoffman is great. And if you're at all interested in coffee, really check him out. I will link to his channel in the description. The Bees by Laline Paul. This book stays. Again, I do own this book. I bought it on purpose, and I remember buying it. I think I've heard that it's kind of Watership Down, but with bees. I've not read Watership Down. They say here that it's The Handmaid's Tale meets Hunger Games. It sounds really cool. I don't think it's necessarily like about bees. I think you are like reading from the perspective of a bee, which is interesting. That's unique. I've not done that before. It could be really cool. I remember when I was watching a video by Shut Up and Sit Down, who they're like, one of the biggest board game YouTube channels out there. If you're into board games, you should check them out. They had a preview. It wasn't even like a review of the game. They were just kind of previewing it, and one of them was giving their quick thoughts on the board game, and he brought this book up, and that was a couple of years ago that I watched that, but I always think of the two together. Honey Buzz being the board game and The Bees being the book counterpart. They're nothing alike, but this is about bees and that's about bees. So, anyway, it was a great video, and it sold me on the book. He made the book sound really good. So yeah, this is gonna stay. I'm hoping that I get to it next year. The Gunslinger Born. Interesting that this, they have Peter David listed first in the authors here. Was that like his pen name or something? Nope, that's a dude. Adaptation. Wait. Oh, is this Marvel? Is this a graphic novel? Oh. Okay. I thought this was going to be Gunslinger. Okay. I was confused here. As you saw, I thought that this was the Dark Tower. Gunslinger, I think, is book 1 of Dark Tower, and that is a series by Stephen King. That's what it says here. Stephen King, original story. And this seems to be the graphic novel adaptation of that series. Interesting. I'm gonna remove this for now. I think the Dark Tower is something that I'd like to get to eventually, but like I said, I don't know where to start with Stephen King, and I don't know that Dark Tower will be the place to start. And if I do want to read The Dark Tower, I'm not sure that the graphic novel adaptation of it is how I want to start. So if you've read either Dark Tower or the Dark Tower graphic novel version, maybe let me know what your preferred medium of it was. Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious about this. I don't remember knowing that this even existed, but at some point I must have. But yeah, I'm going to remove that for now, and we can move on to The Name of the Wind. I am going to keep The Name of the Wind on my TBR. I know Patrick Rothfuss is never going to write book 3. That's very, very possible. I've kept up with that. I'm current on the news there. Yeah, I know. It's very possible. I just heard that the way he writes is fantastic, and I've been kind of putting this book off because I want to know that the series will be completed before I start it. The thoughts around this are that the series will never be finished, and so that does give you pause, right? Like it's weird to start a series that you don't think you'll ever get to the end of, but I've heard good enough things that I feel like I can at least read this. Maybe I'll just think of it as a standalone. I don't know that I'll read book 2. I've heard less favorable things about book 2, but I've heard really good things about this book here, The Name of the Wind. So yeah, this stays, and I'm very excited to read it. I think this will be early next year that I'll be picking this up. How to Be Eaten. What? I think I remember. I feel like this is like Little Red Riding Hood ish. Right? Is that true? Maybe I just think that because of the cover. Okay. Yeah. It's a retelling. It's a horror retelling of fairy tales. I don't know. I remember wanting to read this, but I don't know. I think I'm gonna remove it. I couldn't really tell you why. It's just not grabbing me when I read through the synopsis here. Could be good. Maybe I'm making a mistake, but I'm taking it off. Octavia E. Butler, Parable of the Sower. I think this is gonna stay. I only own one Octavia E. Butler book, and I haven't read it yet. It's which one do I have? Dawn, I think. Dawn. And I bought that. I think I've heard that that's a good place to start, which is why I bought that one. But I'm not really sure at this point if that's where to start. There or like Kindred or here. Really not sure. I think I will leave this on. Like I've said multiple times, I want to get into sci-fi, and Octavia E. Butler seems like she could be a fantastic author to kind of get me into the genre. So yeah, I'm going to keep it. Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo, I think I might remove. I really liked the show when that was happening. I think it's been canceled. I thought it was cool. I was really into it. And I think it got canceled. So maybe reading the books would be a good idea to kind of catch up. I almost feel like Leigh Bardugo has other books that I'd want to check out either first or instead of Shadow and Bone. I don't really know. Like, well, where do you start with Leigh Bardugo? Six of Crows? Maybe. I think that's related. I think that's in the same world of Shadow and Bone. I could be wrong about that. Ninth House, I think that's a big name. You hear about that one. Maybe I start there. Yeah, I think that is where I would want to start. Ninth House. We had Hellbound come out not so long ago, right? Was that this year, last year? Yeah, I think that's where I would start. I don't think Shadow and Bone would be the place for me. I don't know. We'll see. Blind Sight, we're in the category of I've never heard of this before in my whole life, except for, I guess, when I added this. Okay, sci-fi horror. It's a long synopsis. I've read the synopsis, at least most of it. It doesn't do anything for me. I'm gonna take that off. A Fire Upon the Deep Zone, Zones of Thought, Book 1. Werner Vinge, I've never heard of this author. It at least looks like it's like classic sci-fi. I don't know if I'm ready for more big space opera stuff. I feel like I can only do so much in sci-fi right now, and I'm not ready to commit to this. I don't know. No. Yeah, I'm out. Goodbye, Vernon. Solaris sounds familiar. Solaris looks familiar. I read the synopsis. Solaris no longer looks familiar. I mean, it does sound good. It's not very long. Polish literature. That's kind of cool. I know I've heard the name of this author before. Okay, I'm intrigued. When Chris Kelvin arrives at the planet Solaris to study the ocean that covers its surface, he finds a painful, hitherto unconscious memory embodied in the living physical likeness of a long-dead lover. Whoa. The Solaris ocean may be a massive brain? What? Yeah, okay, yeah, I'm into it. You can stay. The Dying Earth by Jack Vance. My internet is gone. Come on. All right, we're back. The Dying Earth by Jack Vance. That is a cover. That is a very cool cover. Whoa. What is that? Who are you? That's so cool. That's crazy. Okay. I like that. Ooh, okay. Fantasy sci-fi short stories. Huh? That's cool. Alvin. Hey, Alvin. Alvin comments on a whole bunch of my videos here. It's good to see you. And Alvin also has read this book and gave it 4 stars. Alvin left no review, but they rated it 4 stars. If you're here watching this video, let me know if you have any more thoughts on this book. If I should keep this one. I mean, it seems by your 4-star rating that it should stay. Robin Hobb also rated this book. She gave it 5 stars. I think she gives every book that she reviews 5 stars, which is very funny. But yeah, I don't think 2 people can be wrong. This one's gonna stay. Honestly, even if it was rated 0 stars, a cover like this has to stay. I hope I can find a copy of it that looks exactly like this. That's amazing. Doing a quick search on Amazon, and I found this other copy, which is honestly just as insane. So maybe it doesn't matter what copy I get. Maybe they're all insane. Love it. Okay, yeah, you stay. Greg Bear's Blood Music. First of all, Greg Bear, awesome author name, cool title, interesting cover. None of that matters. This is sci-fi fiction horror with some cyberpunk in there. That's cool. Cellular material that can outperform rats in laboratory tests. Huh. I mean, sounds kind of interesting, but I don't know why I don't think it's gonna stay. I don't know. I feel like there's already been a lot of sci-fi on this list. Okay, Hot House City. I think we're about to get more sci-fi. I think this was a hopeful time in my life when I thought I was going to be a sci-fi reader. We want Hot House by Brian W. Aldiss. Again, with these covers, these classic sci-fi covers are just next level. It is post-apocalyptic. We do like post-apocalyptic. But again, I think one, maybe we don't need all of these sci-fi classics on here. So, maybe we're okay with Solaris and The Dying Earth for now. City by Clifford D. Simak. No, not City of Bones. There it is. Again, the cover's a banger. We've got the Tin Man and Toto walking out of the City of Oz. I mean, again, it's a well-reviewed, well-rated classic sci-fi, but again, it's too many. Norstilla, I'm willing to bet the same thing. Yep, we have a killer cover. We have to look at these. Look at this gentleman. I wish it would load in more than 1 pixel. Yeah, same deal though. Same deal. Not that I'm saying that this book sounds at all similar to these other ones, but I just can't want to read all of the sci-fi classics when I have not read like any of the sci-fi classics. That being said, we're up to War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, and I do know that this is gonna stay on my list. I honestly loved the movie when that was happening with Tom Cruise and was it Dakota Fanning? I think it was. It doesn't matter that I liked the movie. I think this book has such a history to it. If I'm not mistaken, I think this was done as like a radio show initially, or maybe not initially, but it was one of the first like radio shows, and I think it sparked widespread panic when the story started going over people's radios, and it was talking about how aliens were here, and I think people were freaking out. It's a little bit of a shame that I know the ending of it, assuming that the ending goes the same way that the movie went, but I don't think it matters. It's not a very long book, and I know I just took off a bunch of sci-fi classics because they're sci-fi classics, but this is a sci-fi classic that I want to read, and I make the rules. So this is gonna stay. I also just realized again that I blocked the list for a while there, probably with my head, and I will try not to do that. The Stars, My Destination, Alfred Bester, and I'm back at it. I'm gonna just remove it. Back at removing it because it just doesn't. Yeah, I don't know. It's just it's not the time. It's not the time. Maybe some other time. Oh, I skipped one. A Mote in God's Eyes. I can probably skip the step where I pull this up because I feel confident that this is going to be another classic sci-fi. Look at that. Sci-fi space opera came out in 1974. Again, it does sound good. It just doesn't, I don't think I need it right now. So, gonna remove. Imaginary Friend by Stephen Chbosky. This one is not a classic sci-fi. This is a horror story that I've actually kind of read. I was listening to the audiobook kind of before I got really like into audiobooks, like before I really appreciated audiobooks. And I don't know, it wasn't really doing it for me. So I'm going to remove this. It kind of counts as a DNF at this point because that was years ago that I started it. I remember that the narrator really didn't do it for me. It's a hard book to narrate, I think, because it's the characters are children. So you have to be able to put up with the narrator, probably a very talented narrator, but she has to put on the voice of all these children, and the children I think kind of sounded similar to one another, and they all, I don't know, just sounded whiny. It didn't work for me. The story was okay, but I know I was at least halfway through it, and I wasn't hooked yet. Maybe eventually I would go back to it again. I have the audiobook, so it's there on my Audible account, but I'm in no rush. Grady Hendrix's A Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. This is another one of those authors where, like, I know that there are other books by this author that I have on my TBR, or at least I would assume there are. We'll see in a second. I've read My Best Friend's Exorcism, and I liked it. I gave it 4 stars here. I think probably if I was to rate it now, it'd probably be more of a 3.5. Possibly. It's good. The descriptions are, very visceral, and at times it can make you like really uncomfortable, and it's, all that. It's well done. It was kind of Mean Girls meets The Exorcism, and it was cool, but I don't think it necessarily sold me on Grady Hendrix yet, so I want to try another one of his books. I'm kind of surprised that I don't have the Final Girl Support Group or Horror Store on my TBR right now. Very responsible of me not to add too many. I do have 2 of his books on here. How to Sell a Haunted House is the one that I would remove, though. So this one, The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, I think this is a good one to stay. I think this would be a cool one to be my second book by this author. Vampires are fun. The cover is neat. I think it's fair to say that you stay. The Outsider by Stephen King and If It Bleeds. Okay, we have 2 in a row. I think, maybe I'll pull up this first one, but I think I'm going to just go ahead and remove both of these. Maybe I won't pull up the first one because my internet doesn't exist. It's like I have dial-up. This is insane. But here we are. The Outsider by Stephen King. Again, these, I'm going to just remove them both because, again, I just don't think that these are where I would want to start with Stephen King. So we'll see what people say, if anybody has a recommendation for where to begin. I feel like Salem's Lot or Pet Sematary come to mind when I think of where to start with him. But we'll see. Mexican Gothic. Do I have this on my shelf upstairs? I think the cover might look similar to the 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Maybe I don't own this. Maybe I used to. Doesn't really matter. Someone receives a letter from their cousin begging for someone to save them from a mysterious doom. I just opened the door a little bit behind me to maybe let the internet into the room more. I don't think that's how it works, but here we are. Yeah, all right. I mean, the page won't load, so I can't see more of the synopsis, but oh, there it is. Yeah, I don't know. I read through the whole synopsis here. It's not really grabbing me. It could be really good, and maybe eventually it'll come back to my list, but yeah, not sold. The Bread the Devil Need. That's kind of a funny title. I don't know if it's supposed to be a funny title. I mean, it's definitely obviously a punny title, so that's cool. Sounds like it probably talks about important topics and all that. I don't think right now I'm looking for important topics discussed in my books, if that makes sense. I know it's kind of maybe the time where you should want to do that, but I feel like there's too much big stuff happening in the world, and I feel like what I need for myself right now is more escapism than anything else. So for me, for right now, this isn't what I'm looking for. Elena Knows. This is a mystery lit fic thriller kind of thing. Someone's dead in a church, and her sickly mother is trying to figure out who did it. I've said before, but mystery hasn't necessarily felt like it's going to be for me, aside from a couple of fantasy mystery books that I very much did enjoy, Rae, who loves to read, another one of my friends here on the internet, liked it a lot. So I'm going to leave it to you, Rae. Convince me to put this back on my list. We'll see how you do. Okay, Here we are at It. I think I'm so conflicted with this book. It seems good. It seems like I would like it, I think. I loved the new movies. I think the characters are really cool, and I'm sure that they're way more developed in this gigantic book. Yeah, 1,116 pages. That's huge. But I've heard that there's this scene at the end of the book that I don't know what happens in the scene, but it's apparently horrible, and it makes you hate the book, or at least feel uncomfortable with having read it. And I don't think it's about, it's too spooky or whatever. I think it's something gross, and I don't know. That's the vibe I get. I don't know. Is it worth reading 1,116 pages of a book that at the end you kind of feel like you wish you hadn't? I don't know. Is that the case here? I'm not sure. Again, like I said with all the other Stephen King so far, I guess I'll remove it because I don't know where to start. I don't know where to start with this guy. The Testaments, Handmaid's Tale #2. I haven't finished Handmaid's Tale #1, so I don't need the second one on my list. Terry Pratchett. Okay, Terry Pratchett's one of those authors that writes kind of, a lot of books in a series, and in that big series there's kind of smaller series. So I don't know if Discworld really counts as a series, or it's just like a connected universe that there's all these other series within. I don't know, the classification works with that. But there are 3 books that I want to kind of use as my gateway into Terry Pratchett, and that is Small Gods, Guards, and Mort. And here they are, 1, 2, 3 in a row. I will be just keeping all 3 of them because each of them sounds like it'd be right up my alley, especially Mort. I think Mort is the one that I would want to start with. I just searched for Small Gods again, but I meant to search for Mort. In Mort, I think we're kind of in the perspective of the Grim Reaper, or maybe we're not the Grim Reaper, but we are kind of his assistant, something like that. Death is yearning to experience what humanity really has to offer, but to do that, he'll need to hire some help, an offer that Mort can't refuse. So yeah, Death's apprentice, not assistant. It just sounds ridiculous and fun, and yeah, I am kind of dying to get into Terry Pratchett. I just keep hearing all these amazing things about some of his books and then very middle of the road things about others. But, the fan base is immense, and they are, die hard about this author. So it's time, hopefully soon, to get into Terry Pratchett's work. All 3 of these are going to stay because, yeah, I know that I want to read all 3 of them independently. So yeah, boom. You stay, Terry Pratchett. Okay, I think things are about to get harder on this list. We're getting more current, it feels like. We're getting more into the weeds. I think it's going to be really hard going forward to remove books from my list. The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter. Oh, also, I realized I haven't introduced you to Bagel yet. Bagel, say hi. Good boy. There you are. You're a good boy. He's a good boy. Anyway, back to the list. The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter. I've heard really good things. It sounds really cool. I don't think there's any universe in which I can remove this from my list. I don't think I've heard one bad thing about this book. And honestly, it's got dragons in it, and I haven't read nearly enough books with dragons in them. So kind of no question that's going to stay. Scythe, I think, is also going to stay. I believe this might be in the category of YA, but I've heard really good things. Yeah, okay, it says YA dystopian. The world in this series sounds really wild. It's there's no hunger, there's no disease, there's no war, and there's no dying. Like you can't just die. So there's scythes, which are essentially their job is to kill people, right? So it's like a whole bunch of people are hired as the Grim Reaper is kind of what it sounds like to me. I don't know if that's an accurate description. It's almost in a similar vein of Mort. We have Citra and Rowan are chosen to apprentice a scythe. That's cool. If they fail, it could mean losing their life. Yeah, it's gonna stay. It just sounds cool to me. That's it. It stays because it sounds cool. Neuromancer by William Gibson. I have not read William Gibson. I know he's got a couple books that people love. The Peripheral, I think, is another one of his. I just watched the show for that one, actually, and it was cool. So, yeah, maybe Neuromancer would be a cool one to pick up. It is sci-fi, so I don't know how it will go. It says it ranks with 1984 and Brave New World, which I have not read. Okay, yeah, honestly, actually, I'm not going to forget that Neuromancer exists or that William Gibson exists as an author. I think it feels weird to remove it, but I think this is going to go away, and then down the line I can always add it back because nothing is real. There's no permanence to me removing things from this list, but I just think right now it's not the time. Goodbye, Neuromancer. That feels really weird. I don't know why, but it does. Chainsaw Man Volume 1. I don't know about this series. It sounds a little crazy in probably a very fun way, but I think, who was it? I watched somebody go through the series. Was it Daniel Green? Might have been Daniel Green. I remember there were some things about it that just rubbed me the wrong way, and I don't know. It just doesn't seem like something that I want to dive into right now. And again, I feel like I kind of know the whole story because I watched somebody almost do a read along of it. I don't know that it's 100% for me, so it's out. Remarkably Bright Creatures. Did you know that octopi are really cool octopuses? I think actually octopuses. Maybe it's both. Maybe both are acceptable. Probably both are acceptable. Anyway, they're so cool. They're the coolest animals. They're definitely not from Earth. They're definitely aliens, but whatever. This says it's magical realism based on animals. I think this is gonna stay, although, I could see this being something that I buy and I put on my shelf, and then it's 3 years later and I still haven't picked it up. I really could. I could see that. I could see that happening. There's other books in the same category, and it's like, oh yeah, I bet I would really like that. I think I would love this book. I just don't think I would pick it up. I don't think I would ever open it. So I'm gonna do myself a favor and I'm just gonna remove it from my list. It's entirely possible that I will pick this up at some point, and I legitimately hope that I do, but I don't think that I will, and based off of that, I will be removing it from the list. The Shadow of the Gods, I know that's going to stay, and then The Hunger of the Gods I will remove because it's book 2. Book 3 just came out, and I've heard really just phenomenal things, not just about book 3, but the series as a whole. And I have not read John Gwynne, and that feels like I'm doing myself a disservice. So that's definitely a very high priority read for me. To start the Bloodsworn Saga, to start The Shadow of the Gods again, hopefully next year. But I don't need book 2 on this list, my TBR, and hopefully book 3 is not on here. I don't need that either. The scale shown in the covers of these books is absurd, right? You look at the cover from afar and you're like, oh, look at that cute little puppy, but then you realize that it's a big puppy. Look at these are people. That's crazy. That's nuts. And the first book, it's a dragon, and then the second one, it's a puppy, and then in the third one, it's a snake. It's just nuts. I want to read about the world where that puppy is the same size as this dragon, and that the dragon is a comparable size to this snake. It just sounds like it's got to be a terrifying world, and I need to know what that's like. So yeah, I will absolutely be getting to this series. Moving on, we have Gunmetal Gods. This is another one that I know, again, that it's going to stay. Oh no, I said I was going to be brutal today, and we're heading into a lot of books that are going to stay on my list, but it has to stay. It has to stay. I read the free novella that you get for signing up for Zamil Akhtar's newsletter, and it was good. It was dark. It was brutal, but it was good. Death Rider, that's the one. It was really good. Yeah, I gave it 4 stars, but I remember it. Like I feel like I read it a while ago, but I remember exactly what happened. It was really powerful. These are big books. If the first is any indication of how good the rest of the series is going to be, I'm fully on board. So absolutely, that stays on my list. Okay, we have another Natalie Haynes book. So here we come into my problem that I have, where I add all these books by the same author. Ah, no, I have 4 books by this author. Urgh. Where do you start? Where do you start? I don't know. I don't know where to start. A Thousand Ships was the first one on the list. And I'm just going to say that's where I start. I know Divine Might is her latest. At least I think it's her latest. It says here published in 2023, so that sounds like her latest. But yeah, I think it's smart. I think it's smart to stick to A Thousand Ships. I don't know really what I'm basing that off of. I just know that these are, unconnected stories by the same author, and they're Greek mythology retellings, and I like that sort of thing, and A Thousand Ships got here first. So if you've read Natalie Haynes especially, please let me know a starting point if I'm making a mistake here. But yeah, I'm gonna remove this. I'm hoping that one day I've read all of these, at least A Thousand Ships, Stone Blind, Divine Might, and Pandora's Jar, but I can't read them all at once, and I don't know that I want to read all 4 of them if I haven't read any book by this author. So yeah, anyway, I'm rambling. It's that one's gonna go. And then we have 2 books by Jennifer Saint in a row. We have Atalanta and we have Electra. I think a friend of mine read one of these and did not like it. Unless I'm thinking of the wrong... Oh no, I'm thinking of Ariadne. I think a friend of mine recently read Ariadne, which is one that I was high on my list. And this author was high on my list, right? You can see here I have added 4 books to my TBR by this author. But that friend of mine hated Ariadne. So I'm conflicted. I don't know which one should stay. I really don't. Or if any of them should stay. Maybe again, I just go in order that they showed up on my list. Or maybe I should go in publication order. Maybe Ariadne should be the one to stay. We'll go with that. We'll go with publication. Even though I am fairly certain that my friend hated this book. Kaikei, I think is how you pronounce it, by Vaishnavi Patel. This one's gonna stay. This is cool because it's, I say that I like Greek mythology retellings, but I really haven't branched out into other mythologies. I haven't checked out really Norse mythology, for example, or in this case, I think this is Indian mythology. The story sounds great, and I've heard so many things, and it's a brand new category of book of mythologies for me. So yeah, I'm gonna keep that. I'm excited to get to that one someday. Ithaca, we're back to Greek mythology. I think since adding this, I've heard some unfavorable things about it. Not that it's terrible, but I can't remember who it was. I think somebody that I follow and that I trust on the internet had said something about how they didn't love the writing. And I think maybe that's enough for me for right now. I have a lot of Greek mythology on my TBR, and I don't know that I have a great reason for removing it, but yeah, I think it's gonna go. Maybe when I read the Odyssey, when Stephen Fry's Odyssey comes in the mail, if this character, Penelope, who I assume is in it because they're the wife of Odysseus, if I want to know more about Penelope, maybe I'll pick up Ithaca, but we will see. The next 3 I'm gonna remove because they don't even have titles yet. I have Untitled, Mistborn 9, 8, and 10. I hate how people can rate books on Goodreads that don't exist yet. I understand it if, when the book hasn't been released to the public yet, right? And there are arcs and people get their advanced reader copies and they're reviewing them, and that's the point of that I get. Book's not out yet, but you've read it. That makes sense. But for a book to have a 4.56, and it hasn't even been written yet. It feels weird to me, and I hate it. I don't think that's helpful to anybody. That functionality shouldn't be able to exist yet for these books. Regardless, I will absolutely be reading these books. There's no question about that, but I don't need them on my TBR right now because, again, they probably haven't been written, at least not in the form that they will be released in. I don't think these are coming out for years. So, I'm sure he's got a plan. We trust Brandon Sanderson, but I don't need these on this list. John Gwynn's Faithful and the Fallen series is another one that's very high up on my TBR. But I do think that I will be doing Bloodsworn before the Faithful and the Fallen at this point. And as I go from there, I will almost undoubtedly add Malice back to my TBR, and I will probably want to get into this series if it is half as good as people say it is. But yeah, I think I can safely remove this with the knowledge that I will be reading the Bloodsworn saga, and with the knowledge too that once I finish that, I will want more John Gwynn, I'm sure. So in the honor of removing things from this list, Malice will go away, but as a reminder, me removing it from the TBR is not a permanent thing. So don't get at me in the comments about it. Unless you think that The Faithful and the Fallen should be read before Bloodsworn Saga. Like if you think that I should prioritize this series over that series, let me know. But otherwise, that's probably the order that I'll read these in. Jade City by Fonda Lee is another one that's absolutely going to stay on my list. I can't wait to get to the series. It's urban fantasy, and it's like rock-based magic. Like people have jade, magical jade that gives them superhuman abilities, and I love that stuff. So yeah, I'm in. I love that stuff. I've not read this stuff. I love the idea of that stuff, at least. So I'm fully in. And you stay on my list, Fonda Lee. Dreams of the Dying doesn't sound familiar at all to me, which is surprising based on the fact that this cover is absolutely wild. It's a horror fantasy, Inception in a Polynesian fantasy setting. What? It's an indie author, which, we love that. Good old Petrick gave it 5 stars. One of the best books he's ever read. Okay, I mean, yeah, the synopsis sounds wild. Honestly, I'm peeking ahead at the list though, at what we have to come, and I think I'm just gonna remove it. I think I am, which might be a mistake because everything about it seems right up my alley. I don't know. If your mind is the enemy, where do you run? Ooh, that's good. It's a good hook. 826 pages, which again, I'm not afraid of a large book, but that's a large book. Okay, all right. It stays. It'll stay. It stays for now. Yeah. Final answer. Moving on. The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson is apparently on my TBR, which is funny because I have read The Way of Kings. Oh, that's why. I have the UK editions of the Stormlight Archives of all of Brandon Sanderson's books that I own, aside from the Secret Projects. And in the UK, his publishers have him split it into 2 books. So Way of Kings Part 1, Way of Kings Part 2. So those ones I have marked here as read, 5 stars, and The Way of Kings, the US edition, the 1-book version of it, I have listed as to read. Anyway, nobody cares about that. I'm removing this from my TBR. I've already read the book. I love the book. That's all we need. Allomancer Jack and the Pits of Eltania, I can actually also remove. This was in the Arcanum Unbounded, and I read the Arcanum Unbounded almost in its entirety, with the exception of White Sand, which I don't really care to read. They don't even have the full thing, I don't think. They just have like the first little bit of White Sand in there. But yeah, whatever. I've read this, so it's off. Full Throttle by Joe Hill. I think I talked about this in either the last video or the one before it. This is a collection of short stories by Joe Hill, Stephen King's son, and I have it upstairs, and this, I think, is a good place to start with him. Nobody told me otherwise, and yeah, that's gonna stay. It's seems like a good place to begin. The Girl in Red does not sound super familiar, but again, it looks like it's a like maybe another Little Red Riding Hood horror fantasy retelling, all that stuff. I don't know why, but again, just like the last one, How to Be Eaten, I don't think it seems super interesting. I don't think I'm looking for a Little Red Riding retelling right now. So it's gonna go. The Burning Girls, that sounds familiar. What's this? C.J. Tudor. Okay, it sounds like it could be pretty good. Sure, you can stay. Why not? Bunny by Mona Awad. This one, I don't know. I think it sounds like kind of like Mean Girls, but make it horror. It sounds a little ridiculous. I don't know. I don't know if it sounds like it's up my alley. Honestly, the more I've heard about it, I'm sure it's very fun and crazy, but I don't know. Something about it. It just doesn't feel like I need to have it on my list. And then we have more John Gwynne here of Blood and Bone. Similar to Malice, I'm going to be removing A Time of Dread. But again, I do think that I will get to this eventually. I just think I want to start at the Bloodsworn Saga with John Gwynne. Nevernight by Jay Kristoff. Jay Kristoff wrote Empire of a Vampire, as well as the Nevernight Chronicles. And I think if I was going to start with Jay Kristoff, I would start with Empire of a Vampire. I don't know if that is the right move, but yeah, that's what I would do. Tad Williams sounds familiar, but the Witchwood Crown does not. What else have you written, Tad Williams? Whole bunch of stuff. The Dragonbone Chair. Yeah, I think the Dragonbone Chair is where I would want to start with him, I think. I don't know. Why do I have books 1 and 3 here? I definitely don't need book 3. Well, I don't know. What's this book about? Yeah, I mean, it sounds good. I think I want to start with Dragonbone Chair. I'm going to remove that too. The Genesis of Misery, Neon Yang. That's another author that sounds familiar. Oh, yes, this cover. This was definitely a cover ad. I remember. I mean, how could you not add this book to your TBR once you see that, right? I don't think it's a bad thing, by the way, to judge a book by its cover. And I did judge this one by its cover. And I added it to my TBR. But I don't think I've actually heard a ton of great stuff about it. Neon Yang has a pretty substantial catalog. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know that this is where I would want to start with their work. I don't know. I don't think it actually sounds like it would be up my alley. But again, I will call out that the art here is really good. So well done. The Mountain and the Sea is another one about our little alien friends, the octopus. This, I think I have a better shot at reading than the other one that we took off, Remarkably Bright Creatures. Entirely different book, other than the fact that I do think that they are about octopus. Yes, there's a species of hyper-intelligent, dangerous octopus. Okay, I think that they're all hyper-intelligent, but I guess they're not all dangerous. So they hold the key to unprecedented breakthroughs in extra-human intelligence. Okay, yeah. I mean, it sounds really cool. It does say it's a thriller, which I don't know if that's always my thing, but yeah, no, I'm in. I'm ready for this. Yeah. Oof. Well, yeah, whatever. It still stays. Desert Creatures. I almost read that as Dessert Creatures. This is definitely another one that I added based on the cover. I remember this cover, but reading through the synopsis, again, it just doesn't sound like it would grip me, if that makes sense. I mean, they make it sound very good, obviously. That's the whole point of the synopsis, but yeah, I don't know. It doesn't speak to me. I can't entirely explain why. It just doesn't. I'm going to remove it. Ready Player One is another one of those weird ones where I think I've had this before in one of these videos where I mentioned that I do think that I will read this at some point, right? Like, I think I will. I have it on my shelf. But I don't think my TBR will be the reason that I ever pick it up, if that makes any sense at all. Like, I think my actual bookshelves upstairs would be the reason that I picked it up. Like I don't really know that I need this on the list. It's a book that you know it exists, and I think that I would like it. I'm not really sure, but I don't know. I don't need it here. I just don't need it here. I know it's real. I know I have it. If I want to read it, it'll be because I walked through my living room and I was like, oh, what do I want to pick up next? And then I picked this up off the shelf. Ramble. I'm going to remove it from the list. A Clockwork Orange. A Clockwork Orange feels like one of those books where I probably should read it. I feel like that's probably why it's on my list, because I feel like I should read it. But it doesn't ever feel like I would like it. I think it's time to admit that to myself. Tim Burbage, another great channel on here. I'll link them below as well. It sounds like they've DNF'd it a couple of times. It's simply illegible. I love that. Okay, yeah, no, I don't feel bad about it. I'm gonna remove it from my list guilt-free. Brave New World is another one that's been on my list for a long time. It's also one that I have not picked up, even though it's been on my list for a long time. But this one feels like it would be way more up my alley. I think that I would like this one. I know a little bit about the world. It sounds important. It sounds like a good one to have read. I don't know why it feels like it's important to read this one, if that makes sense. I'm gonna keep this one on my list. Arcanum Unbounded I have also read, so I'm not entirely sure why it's marked as to read. It's very possible that it's the same thing. It's like an edition issue. So I'm going to remove this from the TBR because, again, I've read this. There are some really great stories in here, too. So if you've somehow read the Cosmere and you've skipped over these stories that kind of, get inserted between books, I highly recommend picking this up. There are really some really good ones in here. You want to make sure you read them at the right time, which can be a little tricky, but they tell you in the book when you can or when you should read them. And yeah, again, some of them really, really cool. Pachinko is another one that kind of just feels important. Like it feels like I should read it, but I don't think it's up my alley. A historical fiction doesn't seem like something that I gravitate towards. Maybe this is a good one to kind of help me get into that genre, but I don't know. It doesn't feel like something that I need on my list. I'm going to really quickly just skip over Stone Blind because I feel like I've talked about Natalie Haynes twice already, and Stone Blind isn't the one that I'm going to go with. White Sand I also kind of talked about. I don't want to read in its current state. They're, I believe, going to release a novel version of White Sand, and if I am going to take in that story, that's how I would prefer to do it. I love comic books, but I don't think it sounds very good in the comic book format, which is I think why they're making the novelized version of it. I think the content of the story will probably be important in Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere, but I don't need it as a graphic novel. You Mean the Nightmare Painter and Sunlit Man I am gonna keep them here because I know that I will be reading them relatively soon. I think Sunlit Man might be my next book if I can fit it in, but before Winds and Truth. So those can stay. Steelheart and Skyward, I think for now I'm going to remove. I do think that I will eventually branch. I do think that eventually I will be reading more of Brandon Sanderson, like outside of the Cosmere, once I've kind of caught up and read all of what exists in the Cosmere, which I'm very close to doing. And I think Skyward is probably the first non-Cosmere Brandon Sanderson book that I would read. Maybe Frugal Wizard, but I'm not really sure if that sounds good to me at all, honestly. But I think I can comfortably remove these, and I can always add these later. I'll never forget that Skyward exists. This here, Skyward Flight, also I will remove. And we can move to the fifth season, N.K. Jemisin. This one is going to stay. I feel like really I don't need to say anything about this one. N.K. Jemisin is like, one of the big ones, one of the big names, and the fifth season, the Broken Earth series, I think it's a trilogy. It seems like a must read, so that's gonna stay. Jurassic Park is another one, like that's gonna stay. I absolutely want to pick this up. No questions asked. Children of Time, I am a little less certain on, not because I don't think that I would like it, but because I'm just not sure if that's where I should start with Adrian Tchaikovsky. I think I'm going to remove it for now because Saturation Point by Adrian Tchaikovsky sounds right up my alley, and I recently added that to my TBR. So I think I'd rather pick that up first. I don't know if that's a good idea, but that's what I'm going to do. Blake Crouch, Dark Matter might be where I want to start with them, but they also have, is it Upgrade by Blake Crouch? I'm not sure which one of them to start with either. Oh, Recursion too. Yeah. They're tricky. Yeah, I'm not sure where to start with them. Maybe I'll keep Dark Matter, at least for now. I think, yeah, I'll keep Dark Matter. Empire the Vampire, I already said earlier with Jay Kristoff that this is the one that I want to keep, so I'm not going to pull that up. Vinland Saga is a manga, and it's one that I definitely am really, really into. It's like a Viking manga, and it just sounds really, really good. So this one's going to stay for sure. Then we have Saga, volumes 12, 13, and 14, very random. Those I don't think are out yet, and I will be reading them, but I don't need them on my TBR. I don't need them. They don't need to be here. Bells for Forgetting. Honestly, it doesn't sound like something that I need. It's fantasy, mystery, romance, magical realism. I'm not sure. The hook isn't hooking me, so I'm gonna remove it. Here we have Silo books 2 and 3. So without even pulling those up, I'm gonna remove those. I have Wool up on my shelf. I assume that's also on my TBR later down the list. I know I want to read through this series. I just don't need the second book and the third book on my TBR. The first one should be on there, and that's pretty much it. The Invisible Man by H.G. Wells is going to stay. No questions asked. I think that I own this and that it's upstairs. So yeah, that's gonna stay. That's a good one to have. I'm very excited to get to this one. I have a board game, Unmatched, and one of the characters that you can play as is the Invisible Man. I really want to know the kind of the lore behind that character, because they have really cool mechanics in the game. And I want to know where those mechanics come from. So anyway, this one is gonna stay. Fireborn, the Aurelian Cycle. That sounds familiar. It's dragons, which again I do want more of, but I don't know. I almost feel like I know what would happen in this story. Yeah, I don't know. Doesn't do it for me. You're gonna go. Goodbye. Sword of Kaigen is a phenomenon, and I want to be a part of that. I haven't picked it up yet, but it has a 4.47 with 44,500 ratings. That's insane. I have only heard incredible things about this book and this author. Honestly, they have another book, Blood Over Brighthaven, I think it's called, that I've also heard really good things about. I absolutely will be picking this up. No questions asked. That will stay. The Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England. What a mouthful. This is very possibly the first non-Cosmere Brandon Sanderson book that I will read, even though I really think that I would prefer Skyward. Like, I think that Skyward would work better for me, but I do own this. It's on my shelf, so realistically, this can stay. This is probably where I would start. And I did remove Skyward, so yeah, this is fine. This can stay here. And then for the final two that we're going to touch on today, we have Bleach Volume 1 and Full Metal Alchemist Volume 1. Those are two manga that honestly I just know that I will be keeping. Full Metal Alchemist especially has been high on my list for a long time. I know that I read some of this series as a kid. I don't know where I stopped, and I would absolutely start over if I was gonna pick this up again. But actually, now that I think of it, Bleach, I don't know. I do think I would like this too, but I don't know that I need a million manga on my TBR, and I don't think this is where I want to like go next? I don't know. I'll get to it eventually, but I'm in no rush. So Bleach is gone, but Full Metal, you can stay. And that brings us to 300. So we're going to stop there for today. All right, that's it. We made it to the 300th book on the list. So next month we'll pick up at 301 and hopefully get down to 400. And we'll keep making cuts. We did good today. Again, we cut out a lot of nonsense. A few things stayed in that I'm not so sure about, and we cut a lot of those like sci-fi classics, which I don't know. I feel like I made a mistake on some of the books today, but please, again, make sure you let me know in the comments if you think that I've made any mistakes. If there are books that I removed that you think should stay, if there are books that I kept that you think I should take off, let me know. Love to hear it. But that's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week. Bye.